One of the most helpful items currently in my fishing arsenal is my GoPro Hero 2. This camera is now 4 years old, and it's something I still use to this day because it allows me to inspect offshore fishing spots in ways I never thought were possible. I've discovered its usefulness is unmatched, and as I gain confidence that every time I drop it, I'm going to get it back, I start to use it more and more and learn every single spot I fish. And the way I do this is I made a custom rigging. This is a chum cage that you'll find at most bait and tackle stores. And then at the bottom of it, I've got a bunch of lead weight to send it down a little quicker. And then I got a fun noodle with just about, I think it's 1/4 inch rope. And then that goes through a piece of PVC. And on the piece of PVC, I have a GoPro bite holder mount, a little piece of fun noodle to keep it kind of floating upright. And then I got my GoPro, and then down at the bottom that is attached with a carabiner. And then something very important is just a piece of hanger that I've kind of tie wrapped on, and this keeps the camera straight. One thing I noticed early on is without it, you'd get a lot of this, but now when it's down and the rope's tight, the camera stays locked and focused. And in the hundreds of hours I've recorded while fishing offshore, I've noticed a lot about how fish act, and now not only how they act, but how they act on certain spots. And what I'm seeing on a depth finder, I now understand compared to what is actually down there. And I believe the GoPro offers a much different viewpoint than, say, what a diver will see, because fish act differently when something's kind of coming down from them, as opposed to this camera, which is just sitting down there while they're in their natural environment. Fish are being chummed up, all that. And here's a few things I've noticed about different species. The first fish I've noticed on pretty much all my videos is mangrove snapper. They are everywhere. And what they do is they patrol areas. They kind of actively swim about 5 feet off the bottom, 10 feet off the bottom. And they inspect everything. And they like to inspect the camera. They inspect the cage. Every bait that falls to the bottom, mangrove snapper tend to look at. And big mangrove snapper tend to stay higher in the water column. So if they are your target, I suggest using items that slowly drop because you're going to get hit on the way down. So lighter weights, lighter jig heads, those types of things will tend to catch mangrove snapper. They're also very weary of heavy line, heavy leader, so lighter tackle is better. And then scamp grouper are very similar to the mangrove snapper. They act a lot alike. They stay up in the water column. They chase a lot of baits. So if you're going to be trying to target scamps, I suggest same mangrove snapper tactics. A lot of times we catch them side by side. Red snapper, unlike mangroves, are bullies. They don't just kind of hang out, they go right into the action. They're extremely aggressive, and they love to come to chum lines and clear everything out. They are also very willing to swim off structure, and they eat when they sense food. So if you're fishing live bottom, you might not even be on the live bottom, but if you're got that chum slick going towards it, the red snapper are going to come out. They're going to find your bait. Gag grouper are kind of the opposite of red snapper. They hang back away from the chum lines, and they don't like the sight of the chum cage. So what I've noticed is they kind of just hang back, maybe back behind baits a little bit, and if they feel threatened, they are very willing to leave a spot. There are times when the cage hits the bottom, they don't like it, and they leave, and you don't see them again. And I think a lot of this, they also kind of inspect what they're going to eat, and they tend to not care much for small offerings. So you've got to weed through fish, kind of got to get gags feeding sometimes, got to get them, interested, and then they'll hang around. If they don't break you off, then they tend to hang around as well. So if you're catching 1 gag, 2 gags, 3 gags, most likely you'll keep them around, keep them hungry. And then red grouper are very lazy. They don't scare easily. I think they're very territorial, and they eat nearly anything dropped in front of them without thinking twice about it. They seem to live everywhere and anywhere, kind of like the mangrove snapper, but they hang out more in the structure than the mangroves would. Hogfish are very camera curious. They love to swim up to it. They love to kind of just mill about the rock piles, ledges, whatever you may be on. They're very willing to kind of inspect everything that's going on. And the few times I've seen them eat bait, it really needs to sit on the bottom in sand. They don't like baits in the rocks. They don't like searching for anything. They just kind of like finding shrimp tails, whatever it may be, and they'll stay in groups and they swim, lazily around spots. They're not real aggressive. It's a very different type of fishing and fish for hogfish. And then the thing I've probably learned the most is that sometimes I use this camera on spots I think are going to be good, and we're not catching anything. And I come home later, I look at it, and there are fish everywhere, but we didn't catch anything. So, you're going to be on fish that just don't want to eat sometimes for whatever reason. They aren't hungry. And in that case, you got to have plan B, C, D, E ready to go, because these fish that you're targeting don't always want to eat. And using this camera will help you find fish that want to eat, how they're acting in spots, how you're going to target them, and have more confidence in where you're going and what you're targeting.